tonight. Bracing for backlash. Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen vow more ship attacks in the wake of U.S. and U.K. airstrikes.
Thousands of ships have had to divert.
Plus, China's warning to Taiwan on the eve of the self-governing island's democratic elections. And here in the U.S., the final pitch.
We have a country to save.
We have an opportunity to take this country in a very positive direction.
Days away from Monday's Iowa caucuses. All this and more on Faith Nation. Welcome to Faith Nation from our CBN News headquarters in Virginia Beach. I'm Brody Carter. Iranian-backed Houthi rebels vowed to attack more ships in the Red Sea corridor after a massive retaliatory joint military campaign against the armed faction in Yemen. The strikes carried out by the U.S. and U.K., along with the support of 4 other nations. This comes after weeks of attacks on cargo ships traversing the Red Sea. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell has the latest from Jerusalem.
President Biden authorized the strikes that hit at least 16 military sites in Yemen. Since November 19th, the Houthis have hit ships from 40 different countries.
These attacks against vessels in the Red Sea pose a direct threat to lives, to freedom of navigation, and to global trade in one of the world's most critical waterways.
The Houthi attacks have had a major impact on global trade, since around 15% of that trade flows through the Red Sea.
What's happened because of these Houthi attacks against commercial shipping is that thousands of ships have had to divert, take longer routes, pay more for insurance, and that gets translated into higher prices for people for everything from fuel to medicine to food.
On Thursday, the UN Security Council condemned in the strongest terms the Houthi attacks. The attacks come as Israel is keeping up its assault on Hamas in Gaza, but facing criticism from some in the U.S. On Capitol Hill, Senator Bernie Sanders introduced a resolution that could cut aid to Israel. The Senate is scheduled to vote this Tuesday on a bill targeted at Israel that would require the State Department to report every 30 days on alleged human rights violations in foreign countries. If the State Department fails to issue a report, all security assistance to Israel would be cut. And at the International Court of Justice, Israel is defending itself after South Africa put forward its argument that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Yet one more front facing Israel during its darkest hour since the Holocaust. Chris Mitchell, CBN News.
Israel today mounted a strong defense of its military campaign waged against the Hamas terror group at the UN Criminal Court in The Hague. On the second and final day of preliminary hearings at the International Court of Justice, Israel's legal team pushed back against South Africa's allegations that Israel was intent on destroying the Palestinians as a group in Gaza. The Jewish state calling those claims in response to the October 7th terror attacks across southern Israel, an attempt to, quote, pervert the meaning of the term genocide.
The simple reality is that the events which are the subject of these proceedings are occurring in the framework of a war instigated by Hamas, governed by the legal framework of international humanitarian law. They do not fall within the remit of the Genocide Convention.
The United Nations defines genocide as an act committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. That term was developed in response to the Nazis' systematic murder of approximately 6 million Jews during the Holocaust. Well, joining us for a closer look on all of this is Behnam Ben Talebou, a senior fellow with Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Behnam, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
I do want to ask you, Behnam, first off the bat, how is this conflict between Israel and Hamas related to the rising tensions that we're seeing in the Red Sea?
It's an excellent question because technically it shouldn't at all. The Houthis are well over 1,000 kilometers away, but starting on October 19th, about 2 days after the militias in Iraq and Syria started to fire at the U.S., which was about 1 day after Iran's supreme leader, which is a title meant to be taken rather literally, said that the axis of resistance, this constellation of terror proxies and partners Tehran controls, would be coming online. began to fire at the U.S., the Houthis began to fire at Israel. Fortunately, Israel intercepted all of the Houthi ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. But then late October, early November, the Houthis shifted to targeting international shipping as a way to put pressure on America and Israel together. And you've had about 24, 25 such attacks now on international shipping, inducing more volatility in the oil market, raising prices for consumers, spooking insurance premiums, diverting global trade up to 15%, if not more. Ultimately, with the aim of putting political handcuffs on Israel to prevent its stated goal of defeating Hamas in Gaza. And this is all, again, at the behest of the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism. And just last night, for the first time ever since October 7, since that heinous terrorist attack, the Biden administration, in conjunction with international partners, struck Houthi positions in an attempt to restore deterrence and degrade their capabilities. But looks like there's still a bit more to go, if you ask me.
Well, that's really interesting. You said by your count, roughly 25, upwards of 30 attacks. What is that, since October? And also, what do you make of the Houthis' vow of revenge at this point?
Unfortunately, I do take the Houthis seriously. I think they have both the capability and intent to continue to harass vessels. Obviously, the Biden administration went to go in conjunction with the UK, as well as in conjunction with several partners, to go first identify storage depots for many of the weapons, like drones, like anti-ship cruise missiles, like anti-ship ballistic missiles. But the problem is the Houthis control a vast swath of territory in Yemen. Yemen is already awash in weapons, and ever since 2014, 2015, they've been getting some of the most advanced Iranian military hardware there is. So in my view, the Houthis can actually act on the threat that they have re-upped.
Well, Behnam, I do want to ask you about this escalation between the Houthis and the U.S. Do you really think it's going to lead to a broader conflict throughout the region?
Well, let me say this. It is not at all escalation for the U.S. after 24, 25 such attacks and creating an international maritime security construct named Operation Prosperity Guardian in an attempt to deter and deflect and defeat all of these aerial Houthi threats, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. To be able to try to fire on the warehouses that actually store these weapons. I don't see that as escalation at all. I do see it as an attempt to restore deterrence and an attempt to achieve parity, but 1 to 25 or 25 to 1 still doesn't look so good for the U.S. Moving forward, of course, the ball is in the Houthis' court. My fear is not the Houthis continuing to do what they've already been doing, which is harass shipping. My fear is the Houthis may try to take advantage of risk aversion in their north. There was a story in December of last year that the Saudis were quietly impressing upon America to not kinetically or forcefully or aggressively go after the Houthis. That's born out of their experience of being unable to beat the Houthis in the politics of the Saudi-Yemen war, which went across almost 2.5, 3 administrations. So, you know, if I was really concerned about an escalating war, I wouldn't look to the sea. I would look to the land. Would the Houthis break the ceasefire with the Saudis? Well,
very well articulated. Behnam Ben Taliblu with the Foundation for Defensive Democracies. Thanks for joining the show.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, here in the U.S., all eyes are actually on with the first of these votes here for the 2024 presidential election, just 3 days away, and extreme weather may actually be playing a deciding factor in all of this. Some candidates canceled campaign events in the Hawkeye State today over snow and dangerous cold. Nikki Haley opting instead for virtual town halls. Ron DeSantis canceling events as well.
I am excited because obviously I have been campaigning all over this sweet state for 11 months, so it's fun that we can kind of bring this to fruition and see where it is.
I'm running on your issues. I'm running for your family. I'm running solely to turn this country around. I'm the only one running.
Well, it's at least one survey showing a change ahead of the countdown to Monday's caucuses as a battle for second place behind GOP frontrunner former President Donald Trump, with Haley topping DeSantis for the first time in a Suffolk University poll. Next week's temperatures expected to be well below zero, potentially affecting turnout as voters in Iowa must cast their ballots actually in person right after caucusing. It is nearly Election Day in Taiwan, where voters there will head to the polls tomorrow to elect a new president and lawmakers. CBN News senior correspondent Dale Hurd, he joins us now. Dale, Communist China is warning the election is a choice between peace and war.
That's right, Brody. The shadow of mainland China looms large over this election after threats that the vote could trigger a war with the island nation.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with a representative of the Chinese government in Washington today and undoubtedly reminded him that the U.S. stands with Taiwan on the eve of elections there. The Taiwanese people will pick a new president and legislature in what many see as a test of wills with mainland China, which continues to claim that Taiwan is a renegade province that belongs to it. The leader in the polls, ruling Democratic Progressive Party presidential candidate William Lai Ching-te, is pro-independence from China. The Nationalist Party candidate and the Taiwan People's Party candidate take softer stances on relations with China. China continues to conduct an almost non-stop intimidation campaign against Taiwan, rehearsing an invasion of the island and regularly sending fighter planes into Taiwan's airspace.
In our jargon, we call it cognitive warfare. They do military drills. They also engage in gray zone activities, and they are also very blatant official statements coming out of Chinese government agencies.
During this news conference, China launched a rocket with a satellite over the island, causing Taiwan's military to issue an alert. In Washington Tuesday, House Speaker Mike Johnson met with Taiwan's representative to the United States and assured him of continued U.S. support.
The U.S. Congress stands with our friends and stands for democracy and the principles that you all are trying to advance.
In Taiwan, by law, all the voting will have to happen on election day. So we know that we will have a winner on election night, Brody.
Well, Dale, do you put much stock in those Chinese threats that this election could, in fact, trigger a war?
That would be a bad move, considering Taiwan produces most of China's microchips. So I don't think China has a military option right now.
Dale, thank you very much for that insight. We appreciate your report. The humanitarian crisis on the southern border now expanding to affect places far from the epicenter. When we come back, how churches in one northern city is responding. Welcome back to Faith Nation. New tonight, it's the death penalty for the gunman who killed 10 people and injured 3 others at a supermarket in Buffalo, New York. The Justice Department stating in a court filing today that capital punishment is justified in the 2022 mass shooting at Tops grocery store. The shooter, 20-year-old Peyton Gendron, was indicted on 27 federal counts, including murder, discharging a firearm, and hate crimes. Gendron, a white male, wrote a racist rant online that he chose Buffalo because that was actually the city closest to him with the most black people. Well, Chicago's mayor says a migrant surge is actually taking place in his city, and it's at its breaking point. He's pleading to Congress and for help, feeling the overwhelmed weight of being a sanctuary city, where CBN contributing correspondent Paul Petit shows us how area churches and ministries are helping pick up the slack.
More than 300,000 migrants crossed the U.S.-Mexico border in December, according to data from U.S. Customs and Border Protection. That's the highest monthly total since 2000, and now its effects are being felt here in Chicago, sending this sanctuary city in a scramble to keep up with the influx. Migrants and asylum seekers sit waiting for a hot breakfast and donated clothing at this church on Chicago's west side.
It is not unusual for them to get up at 3:30 in the morning to get on the L at 4 because it might be 2 hours for them to get here.
And at those hours in January, it's usually below freezing.
They'll arrive here wearing T-shirts and sandals, and we're in Chicago.
Area Catholic churches, many of them partnering with the city of Chicago, are working to keep up with the recent influx of migrants.
We've had upwards toward 300 people come on a given day.
The vast majority do come from Venezuela, but we also get people coming from Ecuador and from Colombia. They are also fleeing oppression. A lot of them are fleeing the drug cartels.
Saul is an attorney from Venezuela. He says his family left the country out of fear of the authoritarian government.
En Venezuela, soy abogado.
I am an attorney, and things were very difficult in Venezuela. I felt that me and my family were at risk of persecution.
In the last year and a half, over 26,000 migrants have arrived here. Saul says Chicago's sanctuary city status is the reason he came.
Sometimes they don't have a choice. They are just sent on a bus, and the bus is headed to a sanctuary city like Chicago.
Last month, Texas sent unannounced busloads of migrants, some even on a chartered jet to Illinois. The city then bused them to its migrant landing zone. These unexpected newcomers have Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson fuming at Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
The reckless and, quite frankly, the unsafe behavior of the governor of Texas has caused a great deal of trepidation.
But organizers and volunteers here say they have to set politics aside at a time like this.
I've been saying to people, this is not a political issue for us. These are people who are in need and in care, and we're answering the gospel message.
St. Edmunds began its ministry to help the nearby YMCA and Oak Park Police, which operates shelters for the migrants. Now it's an interdenominational effort.
It is the most beautiful interfaith effort. We have the Presbyterians, the Congregationalists, the Methodists.
And here on the northwest side of Chicago, City Line Bible Church is partnering with World Relief Chicagoland. Church leaders say many of their first arrivals have found jobs and moved into apartments. Some are now serving at the church. But a breaking point is on the horizon as more buses arrive from Texas. Mayor Johnson says his city and 27 shelters are near capacity. In November, Johnson opposed a 60-day limit for migrants to stay at those shelters. Today, many are near that limit.
Without significant intervention from the federal government, this mission will not be sustained.
In Chicago, Paul Petit, CBN News.
When we come back, Christian filmmakers on a new platform and a TV alternative for kids. Welcome back. Carrie Solomon and Chuck Konzelman are familiar faces. The filmmakers are known for films such as God's Not Dead, Unplanned, and the most recent films, Nefarious. They recently attended the Echoes of Creation conference. It's an event for creatives in the world of entertainment. And they shared some big exclusive news with CBN Studio 5's Ephraim Graham.
All that I require from each of you is that you fill in the papers I've just given you with 3 little words: God is dead.
Mr. Kane will insist faith isn't on trial here. But that is exactly what is on trial.
What happened to Edward? We own him. We?
What made both of you, busy schedules, say yes to being a part of this Echoes of Creation?
Michael and Stacy McIntyre, wonderful people, love their family, love them. You know, they're enthusiastic. They're real believers.
And we'd also just relocated here from Los Angeles to Dallas. The Lord put on our heart. It was, after 3 decades out there, it was time to relocate. And
Praise
we were
God.
actually, yes, we're actually refugees at a certain level. And this is where we're to reestablish film and television for the U.S. to counterbalance some of the agenda-driven stuff that's going on out in Hollywood.
That said, you guys are the brainchild behind God's Not Dead.
To me, he's not dead. I don't want anyone to get talked out of believing in him just because the professor thinks they should.
What is it you want to do now to influence and to create content? What are you guys doing?
We want to reclaim the culture for Christ. We're actually not, at a certain level, filmmakers. We are culture warriors, and we're looking to spread the gospel message. We're looking to do that through the medium of film and television, particularly the shift into television. It's where people spend so much of their time.
But I also think it's important that your viewers know, and we know, and never forget, this is about what the Lord's will is, because we didn't wake up one day and say, oh, we're going to go start a streaming platform, because that would be impossible. And we're happy that it's impossible because we know there's nothing we can do. If he wants it, he's got to move forward, right? But the thing is that right now, we really believe that we're in a battle between good and evil. And it seems to us that entertainment is so powerful. We've always said this. If Peter or Paul or John or James or Andrew or any of the apostles we hear today, they wouldn't go door to door knocking on the door and saying, I'm going to preach you the gospel. They would make a TV show or a movie. So if we give an alternative for people to let their kids freely watch TV and give them an alternative and show them that good is not bad and bad is certainly not good, it's going to have a profound effect, just like God's Not Dead or Nefarious or Unplanned or any of the stuff we've done.
So in terms of launching this platform, you spoke of some of the things your guys are popular for. What can we look forward to production-wise from the two of you?
This year we intend to go in production not only on movies, but TV shows, reality shows, documentaries, especially kids stuff. A to Z, everything. What we're doing is just, I think it's an amazing thing the Lord is doing.
At what point did you both realize you were successful in this industry?
The day that God's Not Dead went out, and we've heard that across the nation, a person would stand up, a pastor, anyone, and would say to the audience, is there anyone here who wants to come to Christ? And 150, 300, 400 people would stand up. We knew right then, Lord, we get it.
What I want is for them to make their own choice. That's what God wants.
You have no idea how much I'm going to enjoy failing you.
Yeah, but who are you really looking to fail? Me or God?
Some exciting news there. Thanks again to Ephraim Graham for that story. Carrie Solomon and Chuck Konzelman's new streaming network is anticipated to start later this year. Still ahead, it's a perfect attendance record, finally rewarded. That's next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a Burger King employee who went viral for never missing a day of work in 27 years, finally getting the appreciation he deserves. Back in 2022, Kevin Ford posted this TikTok video sharing the gifts he received for perfect attendance. Those included, get this, a movie ticket, Starbucks cup, and candy. Now, his gratitude was certainly showed, but his daughter thought that he deserved something more. So she launched a GoFundMe campaign, raising nearly $500,000, which allowed the single father nearing retirement to purchase his first home. In another TikTok video, Ford shared a glimpse of the property, thanking donors for making that purchase possible.
I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this miracle.
Kidding. Ford said it's a dream come true that he'll share with his kids and his grandchildren. I mean, that's amazing. That's just something hard to think about, that you couldn't miss a day in 27 years. God bless him. God bless his family. And God bless you. We'll see you next time.